My dad kicked me out for being pregnant, then showed up months later, begging to be involved. It's hard to explain how quickly everything shifted. One moment, I was living in my parents' house, feeling like everything was perfectly fine, and the next, I was packing my bags and being kicked out of my own home. It all started with the news that I was pregnant. I was 19, still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And to be honest, I had no idea how to break it to my parents. But when I finally did, the reaction wasn't what I expected. I thought my dad, the man who had always been my protector, would at least try to understand, but instead, he exploded. "What were you thinking?" he shouted. "You're throwing away your future. How could you do this to me?" He went on, accusing me of ruining my life, ruining the family's reputation. His words felt like daggers, cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. I tried to explain, tried to tell him that I wasn't looking for sympathy, that I had made my decision, and I was going to take responsibility for it. But he wasn't hearing any of it. Finally, in a fit of rage, he told me that I wasn't welcome in his house anymore. "If you're going to make this mistake, you can do it somewhere else. I don't want you here." He didn't even wait for me to pack my things. The door slammed behind me as I stood there, feeling completely abandoned. I don't think I've ever felt more alone in my life. I had no idea where I was going to go, what I was going to do. My mom didn't say much. She just stood in the background, her face etched with disappointment. It was as if she had already made up her mind about me too. So there I was, alone. No place to stay, no one to turn to. My friends tried to help, but they were all in their own situations, struggling to get by. It felt like my whole world was crashing down. The worst part of all was that I wasn't even angry with my dad. I was heartbroken. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was something that felt like a complete betrayal. I didn't know how to process the idea that the man who had always been there for me, the one I had trusted the most, was now turning his back on me in my greatest time of need. I had no choice but to move in with my aunt for the time being. It wasn't perfect, but at least I wasn't completely alone. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my family was falling apart. Then, months later, just when I thought everything was finally starting to settle, I got a call from my dad. When I saw my dad's name pop up on my phone, I hesitated. I had gotten used to the idea that I might never hear from him again. After all, he had made it pretty clear how he felt about my situation. But still, there was a part of me that wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had come around. So I took a deep breath and answered the call. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was racing. I didn't know what to expect, but I definitely didn't expect what came next. "I've been thinking a lot," he started, his voice sounding softer than I'd heard it in months. "I've been an idiot. I've been hard on you, and I'm sorry." I blinked in surprise. Was this really happening? The man who had kicked me out for being pregnant was now apologizing? He continued, "I've been ashamed of you, of the situation. I thought you were throwing your life away. But then I realized I was wrong. You're my daughter, and I should have been there for you, not pushing you away." His words caught me off guard. It felt like the weight of everything I'd been carrying for the past few months was suddenly being lifted. But I didn't let my guard down just yet. "Dad, it's been really hard," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've been on my own, trying to figure things out. You didn't make it easy?" There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him sigh. "I know," he admitted. "I messed up, but I want to be there for you now. I want to help. I want to be involved in my grandchild's life." I was silent for a moment, processing his words. I couldn't decide whether I should be happy or angry. He had pushed me away when I needed him most, and now he was acting like nothing had happened, like he could just waltz back into my life. It didn't feel fair, not at all, but there was also a part of me that missed him, missed having him around. "Why now?" I asked finally. "What changed? Why are you suddenly interested?" There was another pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Finally, he answered, "I've realized that family is more important than my pride. I was wrong to shut you out. I want to make things right if you'll let me." It felt like everything was happening too fast. I had spent months struggling on my own, dealing with the fallout of his actions, and now he wanted to swoop in like everything was fine. But maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. I didn't know what to say next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready to forgive him completely, not yet. There was a lot of damage to repair, and I wasn't sure if I could just let him back in without thinking about all that had happened. But before I could respond, he said something that made me pause. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. I want to help you with the baby. I want to be a part of your life again." I was taken aback by his words. Part of me wanted to believe him. After all, he was my dad. We shared a history together, and there was a bond, however strained, that couldn't be ignored. But the other part of me was cautious. Too much had happened in the past few months. Too much pain had built up for me to let it all go. just because he suddenly realized the error of his ways. "You're saying you want to help now?" I asked, the skepticism evident in my voice. "Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I was being kicked out, when I was struggling to survive?" My words were sharp, and I couldn't help it. He had left me alone when I was at my lowest, and now he was trying to act like a concerned father? There was silence on the other end for a long moment. I could almost feel him searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke up again, his tone softer this time. "I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I should have been there. I was too focused on what I thought was best for you instead of just being there, letting you make your own decisions. I was scared, and I was wrong. But I want to change. I want to fix this." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It wasn't that I was suddenly ready to forgive him, but his sincerity, it was hard to ignore. For the first time in months, I could hear something other than anger in his voice. I couldn't help but feel a tiny bit of hope creeping in, though I quickly squashed it. I had learned not to let my hopes rise too high, not to let myself get too comfortable in the idea of things being okay when I knew they weren't. "All right," I said slowly, "I'm willing to give you a chance to prove it, but I'm not going to pretend like everything's fine. I'm not going to just forget what happened." "I understand," he replied, and for the first time in a long time, his voice didn't sound defensive. He wasn't trying to justify his actions. He was just acknowledging that he had hurt me. That in itself was a step forward. "I know I've hurt you and I can't change the past, but I can be here for you now, if you'll let me." I paused, chewing over my options. I didn't want to keep holding on to the anger, but I wasn't sure I could let him back in without more time and distance to heal. But my baby was coming soon. I didn't want to do this alone if I didn't have to. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll let you be a part of my life, but it's going to take time. I need to see that you're really serious about making up for what you did." He didn't hesitate. "I'm serious. I'll prove it, I promise." I could hear the determination in his voice, but I wasn't ready to fully let go of the past yet. Trust didn't come that easily. It had been a few weeks since that conversation, and to be honest, I was still unsure how I felt. My dad had been trying. There was no denying that. He'd sent me a few texts here and there, offering to help with baby stuff, and even tried to bring me groceries. At first, I was hesitant to accept anything. After everything he'd put me through, I wasn't ready to just fall into his arms as though nothing had happened. I hadn't really told anyone about our conversation. My friends especially had a lot of opinions on it. They couldn't understand why I would even consider giving him a chance. My mom was just as wary, which made me even more hesitant. But what made it harder was the fact that I was getting closer to my due date. I could feel the weight of what was coming, and as much as I wanted to be strong and independent, I knew I couldn't do everything alone. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch, my phone buzzed with another text from my dad. "I know you're busy, but if you need anything, I'm here. Seriously." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to just ignore it. I didn't need his pity, but there was another part of me that felt exhausted, both emotionally and physically. My pregnancy was taking its toll, and I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, having him around wouldn't be so bad. I decided to reply, but I kept it short. "Thanks, but I'm okay for now." But then, something unexpected happened. The very next day, he showed up at my apartment with a small bag of baby clothes and a big smile. "I found these at the store," he said, handing them to me. "Thought you might like them." I felt a pang in my chest. He'd clearly put thought into it, and for a second, I let myself believe that maybe he had changed. Maybe he was actually trying to make up for the mistakes he'd made. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Thanks," I said, my voice softening. I appreciate this." He nodded and stepped a little closer. "I know I can't fix everything, but I want to be here for you and the baby. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, just a chance to prove I can be better." I swallowed hard, the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "We'll see," I muttered, unsure if I was ready to trust him fully yet. He didn't push. He just nodded, his face filled with an expression I hadn't seen from him in years. Guilt, yes, but also a hint of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be the father I needed. As I watched him leave, the smallest of doubts crept into my mind. Could I really let him back in? Could he really change? Or was this all just another part of his endless cycle of empty promises? Only time would tell. The weeks went by, and the reality of the situation started to settle in. My dad kept his word. He stayed in touch, sent me small gifts for the baby, and continued offering help. At first, I was skeptical, but slowly, I began to let my guard down. He wasn't perfect, and I could still see the flaws that had caused so much pain in the past, but I saw something different in him now. The guilt in his eyes wasn't just about his mistakes. It was about the regret he carried for not being there for me when I needed him the most. It wasn't easy, and every time I looked at him, a part of me couldn't shake the anger I had felt for so long. But another part of me, the part that was going to be a mother soon, knew how important it was to at least try to build some form of connection. I didn't want my child growing up without their grandfather, and maybe, just maybe, they could have a better relationship than I had with him. The night before my due date, my dad called. I wasn't sure if it was just another check-in call or if it meant something more. As I answered the phone, I could hear the sincerity in his voice. "I just wanted to say that I'm proud of you," he said. "You've done so much, and you've been so strong. I wish I could have been there for you all these years." I was silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. The anger that once bubbled inside of me had faded, replaced by something else, something I hadn't expected. I wasn't ready to forgive him completely, but I realized I didn't need to. I just needed to find peace for myself and not let the past define my future. "Thanks," I said softly. "It means a lot to hear that." The next morning, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. It was a whirlwind of emotions. I was overwhelmed with love for my child, but I was also exhausted, physically and emotionally. I never imagined I would be holding my son with my dad there by my side. I didn't know if he'd stay around, or if this was just another fleeting moment, but for that moment, it felt right. When my dad held my son for the first time, there was a tenderness in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. "I know I've messed up," he whispered, looking at the baby, "but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." It wasn't a perfect resolution, and I wasn't ready to forgive him completely. But for the first time in a long time, I saw the man who had hurt me, and I saw the man who was trying to make amends. That was all I needed. Hope, not perfection. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for us to start building a new kind of relationship.